Hi, my name is Harris. I'm one of your podcast hosts. I'm also a lawyer at Treadstone Law. For most Canadians, buying, selling, or refinancing real estate, a lawyer is the last thing on their mind. That's unfortunate because lawyers play a vital role in the process. But what choices do Canadians have? Lawyers can be very expensive. Well, Treadstone Law offers resources to Canadians so they have access to the information they need. Whether you sign up for a live workshop or a mailing list, we cover topics to help you make informed decisions and avoid costly mistakes. It's advice you can start using today, and best of all, it's free. Visit treadstonelaw.ca/MAS offer or click the link below to get access right now. If you're looking to retain Treadstone Law, it's never been easier. Our entire process is online. From completing the retainer agreement to your signing appointment, everything is done from the comfort of your own home. We're your digital lawyers. The best part of it is that you don't pay anything when you're retaining our firm. Visit treadstonelaw.ca/MAS offer or click on the link below to retain us right now. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome to another episode of Hustle and Grit. Today on our podcast, we have Tracy Valko. Tracy is the founder and principal mortgage broker at Valko Financial. Tracy has been a pillar of service and inspiration to the finance and mortgage industry for more than 25 years. Her professional foundation has been built on heart-centered leadership, honesty, integrity, commitment, and professionalism. In 2017, Mortgage Professionals of Canada awarded Tracy the Broker of the Year, and in 2019, she was named among the Global 100 list with Mortgage Professionals of Canada. In 2020, she and her brokerage received the Best New Brokerage from Mortgage Awards of Excellence. Tracy and her team are the proud recipients of the Consumer Choice Award for Favorite Mortgage Lending Company in Kitchener-Waterloo and Cambridge for the last 6 consecutive years. Cambridge Chamber of Commerce has also recognized them for marketing excellence in 2021. Welcome to the podcast, Tracy.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be joining you today.
Those are a lot of accolades. I didn't even include everything, so for my listeners, you should always check out the profile. And I'm trying not to trip up on this.
Yeah.
So it's clear that you're very accomplished, and I also visited your website. I just love the branding. It's so amazing. I mean, these are small things that I'm a nitpicker, but
Yeah.
I just love just the entire kind of vibe, for lack of a better word, when I'm visiting the website. So to kick things off, it's clear that, even looking from your profile, you're not somebody who kind of just transitioned into the industry. It's safe to say that you are in this for the long run. This is your career. Can you give my listeners, for all those who don't know anything about you, a little bit about how you got into the industry? Was it something that you knew growing up that you were going to be a mortgage broker? Was it something that somebody introduced you into? And then how did you get to kind of where you are today?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's a loaded question. It'd probably take
Yeah.
more than an hour, but I'll try to do it in a short period of time. No, I had no idea about mortgage brokering. Like, not when I was growing up. It wasn't part of any type of industry that my family was in. However, my family was in the banking industry. Both my parents were, 30 plus years in the banking industry. My dad was more on the mortgage side. My mom was actually one of the first women branch managers in the Brampton area for Bank of Montreal. So I grew up in the financial sector, but it was not something where I thought, oh, I'm going to be a banker, right? It wasn't. I didn't go to school for that. I actually went to school for law and just ended up going into a different direction. But I did work for banks while going to university. When I finished, I ended up at one of the banks and then moved into the financial side. On one of the financial sides, I ended up being introduced to a role where we supported mortgage brokers. And I had no idea what a mortgage broker was, but I was getting more of training on having someone come to us to be able to obtain mortgage financing through the financial institution and being able to take that client right from front to back. So I understood the whole process of an actual funding of a mortgage on the financial side. So when I went and kind of morphed into a role where it was, okay, you're supporting mortgage brokers, I don't know, it was a big light that went off on me in my head saying, you know what, like, this is actually really kind of neat. Like, it's different. It's, what do these mortgage brokers, when I got to talk to them and build those relationships as I was working through a lot of their clients that they were referring over to us to get the financing done, I asked more questions, and it was that, where they were giving clients options and choices. And it was just that terminology in itself was this big aha for me. I went home that night to my husband. I said, okay, what do I need to do to become a mortgage agent?
Hmm.
So, took the
Yeah.
courses, started understanding that. And then I was pregnant with my second child and went off on maternity leave. And then I decided when I came back that I was going to work with a mortgage broker and understand that and just be on the assistant side. And I did that for about 6 months. It took me about 6 months to get my feet wet. I stayed every minute I could to understand that conversation with the clients and really grasp what this business was. And then after 6 months, I just went on my own as a mortgage agent and built up that way. So
Well,
never look back. The freedom and flexibility and being the opportunity to give people options and choices for mortgage financing and to be creative in my space. I think I've always been an entrepreneur by heart. I always looked at people like, okay, well, if I had that role, but if you're salaried but not salaried, what would you do to be able to take it to the next level for yourself as a business? So, yeah,
so,
I
so
started that way.
okay. So my question then is, you're very, I guess, unique in terms of all my podcast hosts and that. So, how did you? For most people, just jumping from a job into more of a business situation, right? If you're like you work at a bank, you get it's a comfortable job, you're getting paid well, you get a check every 2 weeks, and all of a sudden you're moving into a role where you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. How do you do that, especially especially if you just had a kid? There's all these other things going on, so there's a lot there, right? And I'm trying to simplify this, so it would be hard to imagine putting myself in your shoes in that sense. But what made you say, okay, this is what I got to do? There's all this safety here. There's all this new things that I'm experiencing, but I want to kind of get rid of all of that and move into this unknown area. And I love to quote Elon Musk in this situation. He's like, running a business is like chewing glass and looking into the abyss. And so, what made you get out from being comfortable and put yourself into that situation?
Because I like uncomfortable. I just do. I've just always been a risk taker. I mean, you have to remember too, I'm
Yeah,
married. So my husband has a very solid, foundation. So for me, that transition was a little bit more easier. However, it takes two incomes, right, to
yeah,
run a household. And I had a son at home as well, right? So this was my second child.
yeah,
But I went into the broker space, hired on as an assistant, right? So I
mm-hmm,
didn't just actually, okay, I'm an agent and self-employed, right? Now it
yeah,
only took me 6 months because in that 6 months, what I did is I told my husband, I'm dedicating my time in between taking care of the kids to everything I need to know to get myself successful and known to some extent in the industry in my area. Because you got to remember, I was salaried at a company, went
yeah.
on maternity leave, and we moved here to my area in Kitchener Waterloo. And I knew three people. I knew my grandparents
Oh.
and my husband. Okay. So think about this going like, and God bless them to be so supportive because anybody else
Mm,
said, okay, Tracy, this is like a recipe for disaster for you. You don't even have a network. And you got to remember, like, I've been brokering a long time. So back when I started, there was no social media or there was no this. There
yeah.
was, it's grassroots content, it's knocking on doors, it's, thinking outside the box. So in that 6 months, what I did, not only did I sit with the broker of record that I was hired on to be his assistant, I would sit in and listen to him talk to the client so I could understand that craft of confidence in my speech. I talked to him about how he networked, what his, how he built. And this was, again, like he mentored me, but didn't. Like, yeah, you can sit in on it so you understand it, but you're going to stay in that role because you're not
Yeah.
going to be a mortgage agent because you're a woman. So
Mm.
that's what I was dealing with too in that narrative. So I took everything, wrote down notes, and then I took a course. I did Toastmasters. Not only did I do Toastmasters, but I did it 8 times.
Oh
8 times
wow.
I took it
Oh wow.
because I thought, okay, I'm not going to do sale. Like I understand mortgages, But if I don't understand and don't have the confidence, and when I'm talking to people, I'm never going to be able to obtain a client.
Yeah.
And also having confidence of, okay, how do I got to do it different? And I did do it different. Like, I really looked at who was successful in my area that was not mortgage related, that
Mm.
had nothing to do with mortgages. I actually looked outside of it. I looked at a complementary business, which was real estate. I looked at the number one person back there, which was a woman, and I literally took her stuff that I could and emulated it what I could financially afford on the marketing piece. Like, one thing I am very gifted on marketing. I should have probably opened up a marketing company. Maybe it's on that bucket list. I don't
Well,
know.
I could see it from the website. It looks gorgeous. I really
I'm
love it.
telling you, I could look at anyone's business and tell them what they need to do. I'm always looking. Like, I'm in
Yeah.
driving, even this morning, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I need to do this and this and this.
Yeah.
Um, so I did stuff really strategic. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, again, I didn't have a lot of money, but back then bench signs were like big. They were big,
Yeah.
bench signs on corners. So what I did is I drove around. I thought, okay, I can afford one. It's $165. And my husband's very conservative. So, like, when I told him, he's like, okay, you can't do that. It's too expensive. And you're gonna go bankrupt over it. I'm like, no, I'm gonna take a chance on this. I'm gonna do it. And what I did is I called the police station and I said, what's the busiest intersection for accidents in the area? So they told me where
Oh
it
wow.
was, and it literally was an intersection in between Kitchener and Waterloo, because we're like twin cities here.
Oh
So
wow.
I got my name on the list, and lo and behold, I was able to get that bench, and you could get like a contract for like 12 months. So I thought, okay, I'll do it, God willing. And I did it. And you know what? It took me about 6 months, but it was one of my number one drivers for a lot of my business, believe it or not.
Oh wow. Oh wow. And I want to kind of address something that you said a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a little bit of a pushback here because you said that you know what you jumped in and your husband had a job, so it wasn't like you're taking a risk. I find like people who are in that situation, they fail more often than anybody else because they feel like you know what, my back's not up against the wall. If I lose this, it doesn't matter. You got to have the drive and the grit, which clearly you do, and the discipline to be successful. And because people who have Plan B quickly turns into Plan A, and
Oh yeah.
so for
And
most people,
it's so true. And the other thing too is I don't rely on anyone for income. Like,
yeah,
it's, my, again, we're a partnership for sure, my husband and I, but again, I earn my income. I understood my parents worked a lot of years. I mean, my
yeah,
dad didn't retire until he was 82 from his work, not the banking, but he did a part-time job somewhere else. So my parents put a lot of, I understand work. My mom used to work till 2 or 3 in the morning at the bank branch.
yeah,
So I come from a very work ethic, background. So I understood, like, if I'm doing this, I got to give it my all. And still, I have kids. Like,
mm,
I grew that business to the point I could while my kids were still small, and still I was able to enjoy them. I only picked it up realistically in probably I'd say like 15 years, right? Of that 26 years of me having a business, because the first years was just still get my feet wet, financially getting stronger, and then also
mm,
raising two little ones, right? Because my husband was traveling with his business. It wasn't like he was home 9 to 5, right? So
yeah, yeah,
you kind of give and take, right? You got to give and take. But if you're an entrepreneur, you got to have grit, like, and you got to
yeah,
pivot. Like, you got to be
yep,
able
yep.
to pivot on different changes, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, it's all about sitting back and letting other people do the work. In reality, you're the forefront of everything. You got to be a
I
problem
mean,
solver. You're the one in the line of fire. It's not anybody else.
no, and you got to be humble. Like, so,
Yeah.
everybody goes, oh, you got, like, again, and it's very humbling with all the accolades. But at the end of the day, I still take my trash out of my office at night, right?
Mm,
So it's still being grounded. Like, I still talk to people, so I understand the struggles of home financing.
yeah.
That's my passion, is people. And I always say this. I've said it from day one, even when I didn't have one client. What am I gifted at? I'm gifted at conversation. I
Mm,
care about people. The money came after. I'm in a
yeah.
people business. I'm not in a mortgage business. I'm in
Yeah.
people business first. And I think that somehow during this time of a lot of changes and a lot of struggles in our industry, people have lost that. And it was more about numbers and driven and volume,
Mm.
and I think it's kind of cycling back now that, okay, we got to get back to the actual people element of it, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree. I want to change gears a little bit. I want to move more towards from yourself to your brokerage. Can you give us a little bit about your brokerage? What is it all about? What were the kind of pillar, I guess, things that you stand for when you created it? What kind of qualities do you look for in the people you hire for your brokerage? What's kind of your brokerage's mantra, for lack of better words?
So a lot of our main foundational pillars are really about collaboration. So, opening up the brokerage, that piece for us was more to provide mentorship and support for people in an industry where we felt a lot of people were becoming lost coming into this industry.
Hmm.
And a lot of changes were there, and there wasn't as much support on the brokerage size. Not all brokerages, but I think when brokerages become too big, it's really tough for them to be able to support a lot of, especially new people coming in.
Hmm.
So, when we opened up the brokerage side, it was more to be able to be a boutique brokerage, and really help a lot of people that are aligned with the same values that we have, which is about people driven, heart centeredness, collaboration, the greatness of our gifts, of what we actually can do, and support people on the other tools they need to be able to make their business successful. And so for us, having our deal desk is a strong foundation of the brokerage where we can support the agent or broker's deals front to back, with a very robust CRM program as well to be able to help build their business. That was really paramount. It was part of how I built my business. Like, I have a
Yeah.
large group of underwriters that support my book of business. I wanted to bring that type of element in so that what agents and brokers are really truly gifted at is like their gift is their gift of conversation. And
Yeah.
to some aspects, there is a sales piece in there. That's what they're good at. To be able to excel at the level you want to be at, you cannot sell an underwritten deal and do a ton of
Yeah.
volume. You just can't do
Yeah.
that nowadays.
Yeah.
So being able to bring that support and then be able to mentor a lot of, younger, doesn't matter what age you are at, coming into here so that you can really truly do your gift. We've done a really phenomenal job. Like, I have some amazing agents that are killing it online right now. And they found
Yeah.
their niche, and they've been able to do really, really well. And we've got coaches supporting them. And then we've got our back end of the underwriting, and all of the lenders are very receptive and supportive of the model we have, because we've watered down that process where they're just dealing with our deal desk and not also having the agent as well to deal with. And it's
Hmm.
being able to become more efficient. Our efficiency levels are very high. Our reputation is very high with the lenders, so we'll get better service. And overall, I think it makes the industry look a lot better to have a strong foundation like that. So in saying that, that's how we built it. And it's all about raising people up. And so, I started the brokerage and I had about 12 people that originally came to join me in the brokerage. And
Hmm.
now we're up to 66 agents and brokers over the last 2 years.
Oh wow, that's a lot of success in a very short period of time. That's
It is.
amazing.
So there's a lot that comes with that. Like, it's not without its bumps and wins. And
Yeah.
sometimes
Mm.
it's a good fit with people, and then you love them out the door because that's okay, right?
Yeah.
So when people say, well, you said it's boutique, well, I still think that's boutique. I think big picture. So, I mean, because we have the coaches there to be able to have a group of agents, it
Yeah.
becomes a better model that you can build and grow that way, right?
I mean, if you have the right systems in place, you could still have a boutique, but it could have 1,000 people in it, but everybody
Exactly.
is taught in a very boutique kind of a manner.
Exactly.
But so, what if you could walk us through if any of our listeners are want to reach out to Valko Financial, and for those listeners, I'm gonna have Tracy's contact information below and Valko Financial. So if you want to reach out, definitely reach out. But what's kind of the journey for a client going through Valko Financial? Like, do they have to call, come into the office? Are you digital only? What's that kind of process of taking out a mortgage with your brokerage?
Yeah, so a great question. So obviously with COVID, it definitely changed the mortgage industry landscape. We were already kind of hybrid before that. because it was just, we were being more convenient for the client, and being more cognizant of time for them, and understanding the complexity of mortgage financing. It's not just one and done and here you're approved, right?
Mm.
So we are fully digital. However, we still have an office location. I mean, I still have a lot of my long-term clients that I have great friendships with, and people are still wanting to come in and connect, or new clients wanting to come in and connect. We can still do that in person. But I find that, having the conversation with clients when they're calling us, again, they can call, they can do an online application. There's a lot of avenues. We've had people message us through our social media channels. We're quite active through there.
Wow.
And they're going to be engaged right away with our client experience coordinator that will then put them in touch with one of our mortgage advisors to be able to speak to the client, to address, what are their short and long-term goals, what are they struggling with, and then get into the mortgage financing piece, right? So they're going to be connected quite quickly. And then they're able to do that journey either on phone or through Zoom or through Team Meets, to start building that application. So we do have a digital application. Almost every client goes through and completes that application online. Documentation is sent in,
Mm.
and we're very quick to be able to work on it, because we understand the complexity of financing and also income. As you know now, most Canadians out there have
Yeah.
even 3 jobs, right? What does that look
Yeah.
like? It's very different. So, having one agent specifically with that client is where that journey is, but also having our client care coordinator in there to touch base to make sure that the client's experience is to the level of our expectation. And if there's a referral partner in there, we make sure that we're on top of it with the referral partners to let them know that that there's some progression with their client, so that they're not left in, the loop, not knowing what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
But we also have a very robust newsletter program and CRM, so that that client coming in becomes a member for us, and we update them on trends, on what's going on in the market with inflation, interest rates, what we're doing in the community. And then once we have an approval back for the client and everything's closed, we still have contact with the client, because we send out monthly update newsletters, again, on what's going on in the economy. We do annual reviews. So once a year, we'll
Yeah.
sit with the client either on Zoom, or they'll come in and go through their short and long-term goals. But we do continual touch points before that. So the clients
Yeah.
always engage with us. They don't feel like, I've never had a client say, even during COVID, that, okay, you didn't let us know what was going on. Like, we inundated people. Like, we got on phones and we'll call, right? Like, we just
Yeah.
take the
Yeah.
database, like, let it and go, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about connection. I think the success of the business has been old school. And old school is just talking to people. Like, just get on the
Yeah.
phone and talk. Like, yes,
Yeah.
you send out newsletters, you do all that stuff, but you still got to get on the phone and connect with people, right?
Yeah.
So, um, yeah,
Uh,
that's really the journey of it, right? It's not complicated. It's not anything
yeah.
magical, but you just got to put the work in, the process and the organization of it.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I love to ask that question, just because you'd be surprised how many people, professionals, feel like they could just live behind a computer screen, which I personally don't agree with. The computers are great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, marketing, all that stuff is very good to let your client know more about what they're doing, but nothing beats getting on the phone and speaking to them and having them kind of understand where they're kind of going, what is expected. This is also why I always tell everybody, anyone who's asking me any kind of advice, I say you always got to talk to a mortgage broker, because like you just kind of started off with this, with three incomes, like a dollar is no longer a dollar. People think, oh my God, 100,000 or 80,000 or 70,000 is 70,000, and you can put it in a magic calculator and it's going to spit out a number, but it's not. And brokers are in a better position to help you understand what you can afford. And the other thing is why I love mortgage brokers, or why I really recommend mortgage brokers, is because if you go to a bank, and I don't have anything against banks, I love banks, I work with banks, but with a bank, you go into a mortgage assistant 5 years later, If they're good at their job, they're no longer there. With a mortgage broker, if they're good at their job, they're definitely there. And you can build a lifelong relationship of your first house, second house, forever house, cottage house, investments, every single thing can be handled by that relationship. And you're not necessarily every single time you're going out for a mortgage trying to rebuild that relationship with somebody brand new, because they already know what your risk tolerance is and what your appetite for investment and all of that is, or your house appetite and all that. And you're in a better position, obviously, Tracy, to comment on this. But I just feel like this is something that really is why I drive home the fact that you need to speak to a mortgage broker and then build a lifelong relationship. It's not about speaking and then you're one and done. It's building a lifelong relationship so that they know where you're going. Like you just said, sit down, talk to to everybody about the goals. Like they know where the client's going and they can actually help you build it. Because a lot of people, for example, will, and this is a great example for in the past year, and I'm going to leave this to you to comment in a bit, but how I think a lot of clients go to mortgage brokers, and I feel for mortgage brokers when this happens, they'll always come and say, what's the lowest rate? Now, they go and say this because it's the only thing that they know how to talk about, but there's so many other features. And so saying what's the lowest rate got a lot of people who are risk averse into variable mortgages. And now when the interest rates are going up, they're paying more, and that's stressing them out. Now, I'm still not anti-variable mortgage, but for the risk tolerance of a specific client, had they asked the right questions instead of what is the best rate, they would have gotten a better answer. And mortgage brokers are always, this is why I say you got to build a relationship and not worry about what's the lowest rate. Brokers will get you the best rate, but they got to figure out what's the best product for your client, for your risk tolerance, for what you're doing.
Exactly. No, exactly. It is a lifelong relationship. I mean, I'm very proud to say that I love it. I love the journey of the client, like seeing clients when they first get married to having their children to
Yeah.
grow up. And now I'm at the point where I've got a lot of my clients that are in retirement mode. What does that look like? So it's also pivoting a bit on my business as well. Right. So,
Yeah.
but building those friendships and, I've been there for a lot of clients that have struggled. Like I've had a client lose her husband and, I was the first one she called. I
Yeah.
pay homage
Uh-huh.
to that in so many aspects. Like I get chills on it because I'm like, to have that connection and trust with someone. Listen, we're not brain surgeons, but we do a hell of a lot. Like
Yeah.
I saved a lot of people's lives. I'm not kidding you, from a
Yeah.
financial turmoil, because
Yeah.
they thought they were going to lose their house, and then they've got children. So I really pay respect to that, to the point where I'm so passionate about this industry and making sure that
Yeah.
we bring the right people into this industry and train them properly and understand the seriousness of mortgage financing, right?
Mm.
Because it is life changing for people.
Yep.
So to your point, you're right. People can call and just call about rate, but then we have to continuously fill our bucket up to say, okay, to the clients, let's not just talk about rate. Let's talk about what has changed in the mortgage side, because you probably don't know, Mr. Client, right?
Yeah.
Or Mrs.
Yeah.
Client. So here I'm going to educate you on our end on the complexity and why it's so important you deal with us, and then we'll get through what the rates are, right? So not it doesn't work for everyone. Some people are very black and white that way, and it is what it is. Like, then that client's not for you. But
Yeah.
if you can get through, like I always say, the first part, when I used to do a ton of appointments, my first half an hour was all about the client, the you.
Mm.
What are you
Yeah.
struggling with right now? How do I get to know you better? What can I connect with you on? The mortgage was secondary. I'm telling you, like, all the time.
Yeah.
The mortgage was usually a 10-minute conversation where the first 30 minutes was all about building up that reputation with the
Yeah.
client and understanding they're coming to you because they are struggling in
Mm.
some aspect. It could be just knowledge. It doesn't have to be a life event, but everybody has trauma. There's micro, macro traumas. I'm very good and I'm a huge empath of understanding people and where they're at. I always say I can tell where you're at in a 30-day bank statement, and it's not to hold judgment in space, but let's have a a safe space you can talk to somebody so we can work through that. And that was always a great win for me in terms of building that relationship. So that's where I think we need to be now. If anything, and anytime, this is more than ever, we need to be more empathetic,
Yeah.
and non-judgmental to people because they've had a really tough go of it the last 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Just because
100% agree.
we were busy, like
Yeah.
just sorry, just because we were busy, like in our industry. I was on a panel about a month and a half ago for our industry, and there was about 350 brokers there from the industry. And I said, the first thing I said is, you know what, we all need a group hug right now,
Yeah.
right? Because like seriously, like what we've been through in
Yeah.
2 years, yes, we were super busy, but we took a lot from a lot of people, right? A lot
Yeah.
of stuff people were going through, right? So it's definitely challenging. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely, I agree with everything you're saying. It's all about honestly trust and what people have gone through. I mean, even if you look at like what happened the past year, the interest rate hikes have stressed out a lot of people. People forgotten that I believe was it this time last year or like January, February of last year, we were still in lockdown. We are in the tail end of a 2 year lockdown where you couldn't go to the malls that easily. You had to like basically line up outside and they're only letting so many people in. And that's stressful for a lot of people because your entire kind of, you don't, there's so much unpredictability when you've got kids involved. It affects kids that everybody's wearing a mask and there's just a lot of stuff involved with it. And then off of that, you're going into a market environment where interest rates are going up. And for a lot of people, that's putting a lot of stress in terms of how much mortgage they can afford and what they can do. And I feel like, and this is a great segue into the next segment, but I feel like a lot of people are self-conscious about it's a personal thing about their mortgage payments, about their financing, and when they're hitting tough times, they sometimes, and let me know if you agree with this, and because obviously you've seen this more than I have, they sometimes get information a little bit on the later end when they have to, as opposed to kind of coming in early and figuring out, okay, this is my situation, this is what I got myself into, whether my mortgage rates are skyrocketing and I can't make a payment or whatever it is, they kind of come in too late because they're like, I don't want to show anybody this. This is something that I'm embarrassed about, or whatever the reason may be. And so when things get really bad is when they walk in, when they should be kind of coming in right from the onset and saying, listen, this is the issue. Can you help me out, Tracy? Is that something that, are you seeing that? Or is that something that I am
Yeah.
kind of way off
No,
left
no, no,
field?
you're right. I mean, we still see it. I mean, I'd loved in a perfect world, people come to us right from the beginning.
Yeah.
But, a lot of people try to figure it out themselves, right? And they go to the banks and they still try to see what they can do. And then they get to a point where they're backed up and they come in. But that's where I think our expertise comes in. I'm very
Yeah.
passionate about credit coaching. We have a credit coaching program we do here with Valko Financial. It's got accountability measurements. It has applications and tools, budget tools, debt crusher calculators, where we can really show people how effectively even small little payments on debt can be big wins down the road. Like you can't, if you don't know where you're at, you can't measure where you're going, right? So
Yeah.
really sitting down in a safe space where there's no judgment, and let's say, okay, we can support you. Let's go through this. We've definitely changed a lot of lives. So, sometimes it comes, like you said, at a point where, it could have been, potentially not, it could have been mitigated a lot sooner, but that's what our expertise is. Okay, now you're here. Let's work
Yeah.
on how we get you,
Yeah.
from A to B. And there might be some few steps in the way, but we've got your back. And, you have those clients for a lifetime, because what you do to change their life,
Yeah.
they'll speak to people and say, listen, I was, and they might not necessarily say their own personal situation, but they say like, helped out someone in a tough time, talk to Valko Financial. Or maybe they will say, you know what, was having a tough time. Valko Financial was there. Tracy supported me. Give her a call. And I've had that many times. Right. So
Yeah.
I think that's where, new people coming into this industry have to learn that as well. And it's not easy. There's a lot to learn. So, understanding it and to be able to provide that craft of that conversation authentically, you will
Mm.
help them build their business as we can support the back end on the brokerage side. And that's why I said, like, when I first came into this industry, I had to learn front to back sales side. And I say sales to some aspect because it's
Mm-hmm.
conversation, right? It's
Yeah.
sales
Yeah.
conversation, and then structuring the deal and and back then it was complicated financing. Like, we didn't have like you had to have 25% down payment. We did a lot of first and seconds. Like, it was very complicated financing. but we were still able to do it. Nowadays, it's just very hard with the systems and how big this industry's grown and the time that lenders take to get back to you. You can't grow your business. You'd be working like nonstop, right? So
Yeah.
this is why it's good to have support now so that you can grow and evolve and have people to have your back for you, right? And
Yeah.
be able to do the underwriting for you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I want to change gears a little bit because we're talking about tough conversations, and last year's been tough. Interest rates have been tough, and this is a crystal ball question I like to ask a lot of people. Last year we saw, I think, what was it, 6 rate hikes? I think we saw another 7, so
Yeah.
it's 7 altogether. Where do you predict interest rates to be by the end of 2023?
Oh goodness, eh? Like if I had a crystal ball and knew exactly what it'd be, I think I'd be a billionaire right now, right? Or own a hedge fund or something. So, um, listen, you know what? I think it's there's so many variables. I think to interest rates, it's so sensitive right now to inflation.
Yeah,
And the problem with inflation is, I always say this, like, and I take a quote from Benjamin Tal, right? He says, when the US sneezes, Canada gets pneumonia.
yeah,
Now, that could work in a very good way for us if the US starts getting a handle on their inflationary rate. So, yes, it's slowly coming down to US right now. Like I think yesterday it was reported at what, 6.4.
yeah,
But the market expected 6.2. So, bond yields went up, and then all of a sudden our rates, we're so sensitive on rates, right? Our fixed rates went up. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle right now with inflation, but I do think we're still going to trend downward. It's just going to be a lot slower. I think I'm going to take rates and inflation in two different things. So I'm not going to say predict. I'm going to say
mm-hmm,
suggest
yeah,
that I suggest that inflation for Canada will actually be higher than it will be in the US. I think we'll be at about 4.2% by the end of the year for Canada, and the US will be at 3.5. Now that will go well for us in terms of interest rates. I think that you'll see interest rates around 4%, maybe 3.99, hopefully. I think the
yeah,
3.99 will be a good confidence booster for the Canadian market. Um, I think bank prime, we might see a 0.25% drop at the end of this year. I don't think we'll see a 0.5 point just because inflation yesterday, I think it's
yeah,
a lot longer.
yeah,
I do think that though in 2024, we're going to see inflation go down to about 2.5, and we'll see bank prime probably go down a full percent, but we're still going to see it's still higher than where it should be. So it's going to be very hard for people to stay in a variable or continue to take it. I think it will be into the rate game of fixed rates. I
oh
think
wow,
that's where we'll
yeah,
be, right?
yeah,
So next year, I think fixed rates will be around 3.5.
3.5. So
Yeah,
okay, so we're trending down, and the reason I ask this, obviously, this is a very difficult question. It's a
sure it is.
very loaded, difficult question, but the reason I ask is because something my dad always tells me. It's like, even if you ask somebody who's wise, even
Yeah,
when they're wrong, they're right, and if you ask an idiot, even when they're right, they're wrong,
no, no,
and
no, for
and
sure. Like, I mean,
and
I
you're
could be totally off in a
yeah,
month, and everything's
yeah.
just who
Yeah,
knows,
but
right?
you're in the industry, so the levers that you're using to make a prediction are going to be very different from somebody who doesn't know anything and he's throwing a dart at a wall,
Yeah,
right? And they could end up being right, you could end up being wrong, but you still have a plethora of knowledge that you're bringing into it.
yeah, and I think the big thing right now is the employment rate, right? Like
Yeah,
so you have the US created 500,000 jobs last month. Canada was 150. But if you look at what these jobs were, it was the health sector, construction sector, service sector. These are
yeah,
jobs that were lost during COVID.
yeah,
So that should be a wash. It shouldn't be an increase in jobs, right? Because we lost before. So
yeah,
this is where like I'm struggling with that measurement, because that metric seems to contribute to about 55% of our inflationary rate right now in Canada. And that's why that pendulum isn't changing that much. And the same with the US. I think it's slightly higher. So that's where like, is there is there something underlying in inflation that
yeah,
we're all not seeing? Because
yeah,
it should be a lot lower than we should be in a better, in a better situation. And putting aside supply chain, like we're still like in our area, we're only got a month of supply of housing market. In Canada, we're bringing in 500,000 new immigrants into the
Yeah.
country, which is amazing. But where are we housing people? And guess what? In the last 7 months, in my area alone, values have stayed pretty flat. And a
Yeah.
very, you know, pivotal time when we were seeing, interest rates increase bank prime seven times last year. Values still stayed pretty flat from July to December. So the market's resilient because the supply is needed. And I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of pent up demand. So my prediction, and I'll say prediction on this because I'm pretty confident on this, is we're going to see this market be very, very strong 2024 to 2027. I truly
Yeah.
believe that.
Yeah. No, I honestly, for me, I always tell people right now is the best time to buy a house because everybody's calmed down. This market's not going to tank. People look at stuff in the States and they're like, oh my God, market's here. Like the house prices collapsed. We are not in that situation. We're not building houses as quickly as people are, as we're generating families, as just the immigration part of it is something that creates a demand. We're not even factoring in new family creations just within Canadians who are already here. And we're not building enough for any of this. So without a doubt, I don't feel like we're going to be dipping. This dip is because everybody's just kind of off on the sideline saying, hey, listen, let's wait until I jump in because maybe the interest rates are going to keep going up and price may go down a little bit. But I say never, ever, ever, ever try to time the market, because if you know where the lowest price of the house is and where the highest interest rate is, that means that we're back on the way up. So the house prices are going to be going up as the interest rates are going down. And I feel like my kind of opinion is, as soon as the market kind of understands that, okay, we might be coming down, even if it's a quarter percentage, 25 basis points, there's a lot of people who are going to jump in, and you're going to see a strengthening of pricing. This stuff that where it's like dropping, I don't know which markets is dropping at 16, 25%. I have yet to see a house
I
that's
haven't seen
dropped
that.
25,
No, I
but
don't
I'm
know
sure
more.
it's somewhere, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem is that the the and I get so passionate on this because I feel like the housing market that we've seen this last year was more media driven than the reality of where it
Yeah.
should have been. So like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
8 month decline was based on people looking at Instagram and Twitter and TikTok.
Yeah.
Now, I know, listen, I'm on it. Like this is where people want to be educated, so we have to be on it. But like, I mean, there was Benjamin Tal said it on what I've watched many of his economic, summaries, and he talks about Bank of Canada. Their first thing they look at in the morning is Twitter. So
Yeah.
here's what my fear is because I've seen it in my market right now. We've seen people go into multiples already.
Yeah.
We've seen and multiples just because there's a lack of supply, right? So 35 offers on a property, 150 over ask, but now it was underlisted. So in fairness, it was about 50 over ask, but that's still good.
Yeah.
And you don't want that narrative of 150 over ask, 35 offers going out on Twitter continuously from the real estate side or even from our side, because guess who's seeing that? The Bank of Canada. So what's
Yeah.
going to happen? They're going to sit there and go, wow, we're resilient. So guess what? We don't need to actually decrease bank prime. We can hold it steady. Or in fact, the US is talking about potentially 2 other hikes of a quarter point. Maybe we'll do the same. You see how the narrative of social media is starting to
Yeah.
come in that
Yeah.
percentage of where inflation's at. That's why this is
Yeah.
really hard. It's hard to make any predictions, suggestions, because we don't know the minds of what the Bank of Canada is thinking right now, right?
And on the other end, like we have seen, like there's been a lot of doom and gloom online, and a lot of the times I've seen a few times where it's like, oh my God, sold 100 below asking, the market's crashing. Well, it's not. The reality is when you're listing a house, you have a price that you're getting at, and if the market is really hot, you're gonna price it below the market value, so everybody's blind, they bid. And when the market is not slow, but it's not as hot, you're gonna price it above to pull the price up. And you're gonna sorry, when I say above, you price it above the market value to pull the offers up. So when you're looking at 100,000 below asking, you have to. The real question is where was the final price in relation to the market value of the house and not what the number it was listed on, because that number could be anything. Nobody governs or polices what number you're going to list a property at. And so especially for home buyers and looking at that stuff, I feel like that really either scares them either way. If you have like a house with 35 offers, they're panicking, oh my God, prices are going up. And if it's like, oh my God, it's below asking was where they close, they're thinking prices are coming down. And I feel like the media, media can't do anything. It's not like there's a media out there, but just the pursuit of education should be actually falls on the shoulders of the consumer ultimately, not to get your information from Instagram. A lot of last year was, I feel like everybody's looking at their house prices like they're day trading. It was like penny stocks, goes up and down, up and down. Everybody's like, oh my God, when it doesn't really affect them that much, but they're panicking because that's what everybody's saying. So my kind
Yes.
of, I guess, my question, and I want to wrap this up with this, is for purchasers out there who are looking at all of this, who panic either way because they think that house prices are going down or up or whatever it is. What's your advice on how they should approach 2023? Should they be buying? Should they not be buying? How early on should they start that conversation with a mortgage broker, with yourself, with your team about buying a house and what they need to get their financing right?
Yeah, no, that's a great way to end this. I've been doing a ton of speaking on this is about opportunity this year.
Mm,
It's taking a look at opportunity for individuals, for their families. The perception of what the media is showing is not necessarily the reality that's out there for you and your financing. So, right
mm-hmm,
from the beginning, if you're looking to buy, you need to speak to a mortgage professional. And I just say that because, again, I want to make sure that I support the industry as a whole. So, yes, we are licensed, like Velco Financial is licensed across the country, but if we're not a fit, there's another mortgage brokerage company out there that fits you. That's great. As long as you're speaking, I support the mortgage
mm,
broker industry, right? Because I'm a true advocate to be able to provide people choices and options. So you need to nowadays have a strategy and someone that's a professional that can, because I'll go through exactly where the market is at, show you exactly where it's at. I've got a huge spreadsheet that we've done showing a comparison of last year in February when we were at the peak of values. In my market was like 1.2, and the market's come down, and now you can buy a home, let's say single detached, for 800,000. Look how much you've saved in terms of how much more down payment. Like you're
mm,
saving, like I've got a whole spreadsheet. You've saved like $168,000 on a down payment that you would have had to pay at the peak of last
yeah,
year. Even with rates going up, I'm still showing people savings of about $200 to $250 a month. And then overall, in terms of your mortgage balance in 5 years from now, being down 158,000, like these are huge wins that the media is not talking about. That's actually a reality out there. So
mm,
getting into the market now when the pent up demand is there, new immigration still continuing to come in, and we need to house people, and we see where rent's going. We need to
mm,
have conversation with people to say, listen, sometimes there's time where you need to actually look at getting into home ownership. This is the year to do it, because as inflation's coming down, which we're proving it right now, it's working through this, and we start getting into rates coming down, bank prime eventually coming down. This market is going to go like this very quickly,
yeah,
very quickly.
yeah.
So opportunity is now. And I think that that's more than ever, anybody has to be able to sit in front of a mortgage professional so that we can show people opportunity and options and provide them a strategy for that long-term goal or short-term goal of home ownership.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. For any of my listeners who want to start a conversation with Tracy or her team, depending on where you're listening, I'm going to have her contact information on the side or below. Check her out. Thank you for an
Oh,
amazing
thank you.
conversation, Tracy.
That was awesome. Thanks so much.